full council meeting next Tuesday. I don't believe there's any apologies. I've got a full house here this evening, and I just need you to sanction that I sign the minutes of the meeting of the 10th of December. If that's okay with you all, do that. Pecuniary declarations of interest is items 3. We all know code of conduct and what's expected of us all in relation to that. And on the local government exclusion of the press and the public, there is a part 2 item towards the end of the agenda, and there's also a part 1 item of that, in order that we can do a lot of that in the public domain about that item. So councillors, when you come forward to speak, make statements on item 17 or 16, when you come forward on those issues, please remember there's part 2 issues and part 1 issues. Okay? And if you feel that you should have come on part 17, on the part 2, well, do you know what? I'm going to let you have your say in the closed session if you're allowed to state that. So I'm trying to be as reasonable and fair as possible in order to have a full debate discussion about these very, very important issues we face in this city. So whilst we'll be talking about a number of issues on this agenda later on, there's well in excess of 2,400 people nationwide, and indeed 1,000 people in the Exeter and adjoining areas, all worrying at this moment in time where their future lies. Now, although the airport is outside of our city, we have a great influence in that. We need to. It's an important strategic part that contributes to our city. So I'm going to ask the Chief Executive to explain, because we have been in discussions prior to now, and we are where we are with our discussions with Flybe and the people at the airport and Virgin Connect, and also the County Council and District Council of East Devon, into what we can do. Remember, we're not running it, we are not saving them from that side, but we are doing as much as we can. Chief Executive.
Yeah. Well, firstly, you're right to point out it's a serious issue for us and deeply concerning. When the current consortium took over the airline, the public sector, so Devon County Council, East Devon District Council, and ourselves, worked with the airport, the local enterprise partnership, and Exeter College to look at what we could do to support the company in making sure that the latest venture was successful. And we've steadily worked consistently over a number of weeks to put together a package which would help to support the company. I mean, the key points to point out for us are we've got a high level of skilled engineering staff based at Exeter. We've got a number of headquartered staff based at Exeter. We've got an academy with apprenticeships, and strong ties in with our college. We have a hotel that gains a lot of its trade from the airport, and we've got an airport where 78% of its flights involve this company. And when you look across the region, the peripherality of our region, and particularly our islands around the country, Flybe is a major provider of connections between those locations and destinations that they need to be in. So for us, for all kinds of reasons, Flybe matters to us. So it's been encouraging the last day or two to hear soundings from government that they're prepared to look at doing things concrete to address the needs. There's been reference there to the levelling up of air passenger duties, which at the moment domestic flights have to pay twice the rate at which international flights, because it's levied on when you're flying. So domestic flights have to pay twice. So the government's looking at that together with what has been announced today, potential opportunities for funding. So that's all encouraging. But the main thing is, for us, the human element of this, there are a lot of our residents whose livelihood depends on this company, and this company matters to the way this city performs and the region performs, and it's vital that government addresses that need.
I want to say what we're doing with the council, with the partners.
So the County Council has taken the lead on this one for us. So there's a group of us. And the kind of support that is being sought relates to a number of issues, whether it be accommodation, supporting on skills and the academy together with marketing, and issues with investment in the airport. I don't think I should divulge the detail of the content of that package, but just to say that the local authorities are very much committed to helping make this company succeed.
Good, thank you. And I thought that's all we want to say on that, because we are not major influencers, other than we will do whatever we can do to secure jobs for over 1,000 people, good paid jobs, and also secure that for the people in Exeter at this moment in time. So that said, we're going to now go into the public questions, of which we've allotted 15 minutes. Before I go, Peter, can I leave a set of glasses up there? Can I leave a set of glasses up there?
No, I've got mine too.
That's all right, no problem. If you had my glasses, you could see everything I see.
Oh. X-ray vision, part 2.
Oh, there they are, right in front of me now. Hang on. Hang on, everybody. There they are. Okay, and the first question we've got this evening is from Amy Beckett. Come up, Amy. If you'd like to put your question, let's get something. If you're entitled to ask your question, I'll give you your response, Amy, and you will be entitled to a supplementary question based upon the answer I give you, of course. Either way.
The plan on page 4 of the Clifton Hill Opportunity paper shows a road that comes to an abrupt halt with no turning circle. Can you confirm there is no intention to extend the road beyond the area currently proposed, please?
Okay, thank you, Amy. The plan in the report is an indicative notional layout of the site. The exact layout of the housing and roads is yet to be developed. This will be done during the design stage. There is no intention to develop roads beyond the red line boundary shown on the plan contained within the report. It is in the intention that access routes are maintained and the existing access road outside of the red line boundary, serving the golf driving range and the ski slope, will connect to a road in the new development. In other words, they will have their access maintained.
Great. Brilliant. That's yeah, when I looked at the plan initially, it did just seem a bit odd that the road finished, but now that you said that, I'm really pleased that you've confirmed publicly that there's no plans for an extension or any other phases. Thank you.
And thank you for your question, Amy. I think you're the first member of the public, and your response to that was brilliant. It was absolutely pleasing. Thank you. So we have another question, and this is from Ginny Russell. Come forward, Ginny, please.
Hello again. The open area of green space between the sports centre and access road to the ski centre or golf range is mowed at regular intervals. To encourage existing wildflowers, will Exeter City Council stop mowing the whole area and leave most uncut, please, with only 1 or 2 paths of mown grass between the wild areas?
Thank you, Jenny. The response is we are also keen to see this area enhanced for wildlife and biodiversity with reduced mowing and increased wildflower flower planting. We will talk to the local community about what they would like to see for this piece of green space and develop a more diversity-focused management plan. And I'll just add, Ginny, as you know, you personally understandably on this, we have every intention of consulting and engaging the local community on what happens to that space behind. That has always been our intention, and I'm saying here now it will be our intention. As for the timing of that, Nothing will change until we've spoken to people and consulted fully.
Well, thanks very much. That's very reassuring. I know I can ask a supplementary question, so I guess my question would be whether biodiversity is on the agenda for this council in terms of managing urban spaces within Exeter's remit more generally, because I think that's something that has wide support within the whole city.
Thank you, Ginny. I can assure you that this is one of our key factors that we want to bring into so many things. We are fully committed to doing whatever we can to bring about a carbon neutral Exeter by 2030. The City Council, for example, will be basically self-sufficient in electricity within 2 years. We've got a fleet of vehicles which will be electric based, which is important. We will be sourcing that electricity from within. We've got so many imaginative stuff on carbon, on biodiversity is what we want to do. We're working with the Wildlife Trust, Devon Wildlife Trust. We're going to continue to do that. You must believe me, Ginny, that none of us, none of the members, nor myself of this executive, want to do any more damage to this city that's already been done inadvertently by generations before. We know there's a crisis. We truly get it. But we've got a number of constraints, and I think one of the best ways is engaging the communities as we go forward, because these are joint problems that we have to resolve. We're already talking to many of the anchor institutions within the city, the Met Office, the universities, the college, the police, Chamber of Commerce, everybody concerned to try to bring forward, to focus minds on this, which is a big, big issue for our city. And I'm just so pleased that we're doing it. Well, I mean, the portfolio reminded me, what have we got, 24.5% of tree coverage already in this city. We want to get to 30%, that's one of the highest in the country. Plans to plant over 2,000 tree, all right, I'm not into, but there is so much going on in this city. There are more good things happening than bad things, Ginny. So, yes, we are committed to that, and I hope I've tried to demonstrate that.
Thank you.
So, and then move to a question from Emily McIver.
Good evening, thank you. The land at Clifton Hill, currently used as a golf range, could be enhanced to promote biodiversity, create a haven for wildlife, and provide an amenity for Newtown and Exeter. What is being done to ensure this publicly owned open space can be enjoyed by the community at the earliest opportunity?
The golf driving range is operated under a contract and lease arrangement. The City Council will review potential future uses of the land when that arrangement is closer to coming to an end. The interests of the existing contractor tenant will need to be given due consideration as part of that process, together with other alternative uses, including press access.
Thank you, yes. I think that as one of the people who campaigned to save the Clifton Hill green space, obviously I can see that the proposed development goes outside the footprint of the existing building. And I very much hope that should that happen, the community will get back the golf driving range. So, because that is the largest area of open space. So I think we really need to keep that, especially if we're losing some land on the other side. Thank you.
Well, just a response to that, Emily, I just wanted to say, oh, that's it, just ignore it. We're standing by what we said on what I call the brownfield site, which is identified by the red line and all that goes with it. Okay, that is what I said right from the start we were looking to do, and that is what we're going to do. I said we would commit to saving the green open space, and that's identified by that hedgerow, and we'll talk to people, and I don't want to cheat anybody. There is a contract in place. We will discuss what goes on there, and the same with the ski slope at the appropriate time. I've already told you, well, to the meeting where we are on the question of biodiversity. I've also committed that it is not my intention, as long as I'm here and my administration is here, that we have got any designs at some stage to build on any of that. But what happens beyond that, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, we'll be sitting down with groups and organisations to discuss just what the options are in front of us. And one of those won't be that I want to build on it, because that is not what we're looking at this moment. So I hope that gives you a bit of reassurance. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I'm given a bit more than 15 minutes on the basis that my answers are consistent. So, Morag Mason now, please.
Hello. The area of development outlined on page 3 of the Clifton Hill Opportunity Paper shows the trees behind the sports court. Will you confirm these trees will not be felled and that the brambles surrounding them to the front and back will be retained, with these providing valuable nesting areas for birds?
Thank you, Morag. It is not the intention to fell the trees located between the sports centre and the open space behind. For example, the line of trees located along the edge of the red line boundary. Exeter City Living have already consulted with ecological experts on the scheme and are looking to manage ecological on-site in a proactive and positive manner. Okay.
Does that mean that the brambles would be left as well? Because nature likes a messy environment. They don't like everything neat and tidy. And, you know, yeah, birds will go in there, they can nest, they've got safety. If you take those away, then it will take years and years and years to build up something like that again. And that's what concerns us.
I understand that. You're looking to get me to say something which somebody may choose to bash me on the head with. I'm trying to be straight and honest here. Exeter City Living, as I've told you, have already consulted experts on this matter, and they are looking to manage the site in a proactive and positive manner. And when we come on to this thing later on about Clifton Hill, this is what I'm bound to say, amongst many, many other benefits of having our own development company develop this site out, is we are in control. We can be a bit more hands-on. We're not handing this over to a developer, so they say, oops, or anything like that. We will be there. I'm totally committed to the biodiversity of that area, and what we've said, that's what I want to do. But we have to build that site out. We will not be going in there randomly cutting stuff down that doesn't need to be cut down. I can assure you of that much.
Thank you.
So, we're now looking to Dr. Ella Westwood, please.
Can you confirm that the whole of the Clifton Hill site, beyond the red lines on the photograph of the development area, will be kept in public ownership for the foreseeable future?
The land beyond the red lines is not identified for disposal and therefore will remain in Exeter City Council ownership. We have no plans to change anything else on the remaining site.
In that case, when you consult with the community on the future use of the site, will that include the option of a covenant that would enable local people to control its use for biodiversity and community benefit?
I'm currently bringing forward, and we've got a paper that we're discussing on the transfer of community assets. Okay, that exists. We've already had one such transfer and community asset with the Queen's Crescent, which is working very well, where we've worked with the community to transfer that. So hopefully that tells you that I would like to do that. I mean, we're talking about, at this particular moment in time, the green space behind what we now know as the Clifton Hill Former Leisure Centre, as opposed to the golf driving range and the ski slope, because that is still under landlord-tenant arrangements, and I cannot interfere with that. It would be wrong and improper to. As I've said to, I believe it was Ginny or whatever, if that comes forward, we will review it. But in reviewing it, I've given you the commitment that we have not identified it, nor do I intend to identify it for disposal. It will remain in the City Council. Now, as I said, with that green space, if that community group, and we can discuss that too, is a process to go through, I would not be seeking to block any such arrangement going forward.
Thank you very much.
So that was the end of the questions. They were all on basically the same thing. I'd like to think I've got the message across loud and clear on where we are on biodiversity and commitments on retaining green spaces and not building on them. Oh yes, we did. He's not attended. And this was from... So we had received a written question from Raymond N. Edwards, who can't attend. His question was, could the council reassure members and users of the green space, golf range and ski slope that access, parking and utilities services will be fully maintained throughout the development period? The response is, it is the intention that access of the green space, golf range and ski slopes will be maintained during the development period, as will the provision of utility services, all subject to potential minor disruption but with the maintained provision. Parking outside the red line boundary should be unaffected by the development. However, any parking currently located within the red line boundary plan contained within the report will not be necessarily maintained. It's all a matter for planning when it comes forward in consultation with local people. The planning document for the Clifton Hill will come out and everybody will be able to have their say. So I hope I've answered that. So if we now move on to item 6, which is the commercial strategy item, and this will be, in the first instance, the officer leading this is Victoria Hatfield, but first Victoria, I'm going to ask the portfolio holder responsible for commercial strategy to first of all just read his recommendations out, and then I'll ask you, Victoria, to put a bit of pressure on it, please. Thank you.
Okay, Chair, two recommendations here. One is to adopt this commercial strategy, and two, the business cases are presented to the Strategic Management Board, SMB, to determine if a commercial project is to continue. So those are the two recommendations.
Victoria? I'd like to give us a brief sort of background to it, please, and why we need this.
Thank you, Chair. So this is presenting the new commercial strategy for the City Council, which talks about increasing funding through services that we deliver as Exeter City Council. A small commercial team has been established to focus on this important work. Myself, who oversees this area, and a commercial manager who is a temporary post, who has been with us for 6 months and with us for another 18 months. Looking at the strategy and the commercial audits, which is in the appendix, they've been developed by an external consultant with a lot of additional work by myself and the team. The focus of the work is on increasing income through the City Council, and it's a phased approach. So phase 1 is about cost recovery and market testing, and phase 2 is around delivering a surplus from commercial activity and looking at a suitable delivery model for that particular service. If we require additional funding to deliver activities, so if it needs investment, that's the process of coming back to committee and requesting some funding to deliver that activity. Looking at the work that we are doing, it's very much about a focus of delivering on the corporate priorities and the Exeter vision, so it's making sure it still continues with that area of work. One of the first stages we will look at is an evaluation criteria, which is on 12.4. So if it doesn't fit with the evaluation criteria, it's about adjusting that piece of work or not continuing with it. Each commercial idea, we will look to undertake an EQIA to make sure it fits within the Equalities Act. Some ideas of the projects that we are currently working on is around commercial and trade waste, working with the team looking at commercial properties, the cemeteries, ground maintenance, and Green Accord, which has been up and running for a number of years. We are working with the marketing and comms team in terms of how do we develop an umbrella brand around Exeter City Services, and that is looking to be launched later this springtime. And if you've got any questions?
Okay, right, thank you, Victoria. Before we go further, something slightly different. I wanted, first of all, the presentation to be moved. And now we've got a standing order request from Councillor Diana Moore on item 6. Councillor Moore, as you know, you come and make your statement, and that's fine. And then what I'll be saying as part of the new process, as you know, the leaders of the two groups, which is the Progressive Group, Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Ledbetter, are entitled to speak on any subject. Rather than me keep asking you everyone, just raise your hand. And if you want to come, and this would be the moment that you would come in after, before the debate starts. So you're not to be excluded. You are included if you want to take part. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. I've got two aspects to my observations. So, in light of the recommended approach to the commercialisation of council properties and the identified need to reduce the amount of city council budget that's spent externally, will the Executive be reviewing the current business case for the new leisure centre, which sees a third party delivering this leisure centre contract, and give consideration to a council-owned company to be developed in order to bid for the contract, just as there is a proposal to do so for the housing repairs scheme? And the second issue is one that I've been looking at over the past year. In a number of committees I've raised issues in relation to this. In light of the Council's important need to generate income to contribute towards its core services, would you agree with me that it is time that free parking on Thursday evening must be stopped? The Council is expected to lose £35,000 a year, which would offer better value for money to users of the city centre and local businesses if this income was invested in toilet facilities in the shopping centres as an invest-to-save measure. It would benefit all the city's visitors, businesses who wouldn't have to do so much clearing up, reducing cleaning costs to the town centre, the council and the business improvement district, and in particular provide a decent place for people who sleep back in the centre to go to the toilet. If you don't agree with me, I wonder if you could tell me when this pilot will end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Ledbetter or Mitchell? No? Okay, so you've seen the recommendations, councillors. Does anybody want to make any contributions? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to see this paper come forward. Obviously, due to the deprivations of all public sector resources from our central government, money is very tight. The services we provide are essential, but more than that, the City Council goes beyond its job description. It delivers fantastic services and opportunities across the city. And the things that could be lost as the government cuts our funds is the things that make this city special. So I'm really pleased to see the imagination and professionalism that's gone into developing this strategy. I'm really pleased to see that there will be measures to assess on a regular basis whether or not something's working. And there's mechanisms in there as well to admit if something's not working, if the customer base drops, if the income drops, that there's an opportunity to say, this isn't working, let's stop doing this, and focusing on making sure that we get the additional income in from these initiatives that will enable us to continue to help the city to thrive.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. This is the portfolio that I'm responsible for, and I have to say that when I was asked to do it, I looked through the list of responsibilities. This came fairly low down my list. I didn't really see the local authority venturing out into the nasty big bad commercial world of risk. I'm pleased to say that the professionalism, imagination, creativity and dedication of officers has completely turned around my view of that. Not allowed to say because a significant number of projects are currently under development and are, strangely to say, commercially sensitive. In other words, we wouldn't really want other people perhaps muscling in on them. But the range of projects that these officers have come up with and the ability to recover relatively small amounts of initial investment in a relatively quick period of time is nothing short of outstanding. This is an incredible piece of work, and to see the way that officers have not only leapt into the commercial arena, but also, as this paper demonstrates, still maintain their complete and total understanding of the local government responsibilities, councillors' responsibilities and their responsibilities to provide through the various committee structures information to the public. It's been a pleasure to behold, and I am very pleased to have been involved with this project right from the very start, and I commend it to you.
Anybody else on any of it? Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, oops, blimey. Sorry, try the other one, maybe. There we go. Okay, yeah. So, wanted to just reiterate the point around the reason for doing it. So obviously we're doing it because central government isn't giving local government, particularly district councils at the moment, the resources they need to run a lot of the basic services that we all rely on in the city. And it's important to underline that that's the starting point of this. But as Councillor Harvey has said, I think there is an opportunity here, and the way that this report is structured and the way that council is taking it forward means that what we're doing is making sure that what we're doing is in keeping with the aims and objectives of this council. So the things that we're doing are revolve around the priorities of the people of Exeter and hopefully the priorities that we have all been elected on as your councillors. And so when we take these commercial ideas forward and hopefully bring in income to support the services that we all rely on, we're also doing things for the city that make it better and make a return, crucially, because if we're not making a return for you, we're not helping the situation. So it's really important that people in the city understand that this is about supporting your services and enhancing and creating new things that are going to actually benefit all residents, or maybe particular groups of residents in certain cases, but in the broad sense, residents across the city.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Well, from reading the report, if you look at those 10 evaluation criteria, I thought we would be, somebody would have drawn attention to the fact that perhaps congratulating the officers, because one of the criteria is that the project meets our carbon neutral targets. And I would have thought, amongst other things, that is most important what we're trying to do in this city. As for the loss of the car parking charges, well, that is a project under review. I'm reviewing things almost on a daily basis. I get access to this information, I need to look at it. We need to understand and evaluate exactly, are people's journeys being extended, are the times being extended, are working people taking advantage of that opportunity to come in after work, maybe on a Thursday night, so that perhaps they don't have to consume all their free time on the weekend with shopping, and perhaps they could use other facilities of the city to reduce all of that. We haven't evaluated that yet. I understand where they're coming from, but we will never look at that, and I'd be interested, and I've asked Councillor Harvey, who deals with the bid here in Exeter, to talk to them and say, is this what you would like to do? But I want us all just to remind ourselves that it is only the undercover car parks which at this, if you go out there tonight, you pay beyond 6 o'clock. And most of our surface car parks, all of our surface car parks in Exeter are free at the moment after 6 o'clock. The Devon County Council's car park, which has probably more car spaces that they're charging for, are all free in any event. I'm not sure if you're asking me that perhaps as part of our budget going forward we should levy charges on all our car parks of an evening. I'm not sure we're ready for that. There may well come a time in future years when we have to make decisive measures on cars, but at the moment we were trying to support business. And when you look at some of the stats that I get to see, when you hear about other city centres where their retail is absolutely collapsing all around them, ours may not be expanding at a terrific rate, but it's certainly not declining with the rest of them. We still have something like a 800,000 footfall into Exeter a month that people are coming in, using the businesses, trying to keep jobs and our lifeline going here in Exeter. So, you know, it's an easy option. And if only I could put back all those toilets that were taken out of commission for a variety of reasons for a mere £35,000. Don't you think I would have done it by now? There is a lot to that, and you need to see what is involved. Several hundreds of £1,000s to get them maintained up to another place. I'm already in discussions with some ideas for St Thomas. I'm meeting some people on Thursday morning about Heavitree. This is where the responses have come from. And as for the city centre, I do know I know it's a paid toilet at the moment under St Stephen's Row, but we do have the city centre library. There are the toilets in the Guildhall Centre. People can access the Phoenix. I'm not so sure that there is a total problem, or we've not had our inboxes full on this. And I must say, in concluding, we did consult on this last year. It went to council. It was called in by council. It went to scrutiny at council. So I'm quite happy to talk about old decisions that have been taken and no longer relevant, if that's all people have got to talk to me about. I'm disappointed that this has shown its way itself in the public domain, where perhaps constructive conversations, which I thought were going to take place in this way, but as far as I'm concerned, we dealt with it. And just returning, I made a note there about the commercialisation. I worked with Exeter City Futures in developing businesses. The Binet, who won the contract at the university and some other places in the city centre. This is what this document's about. This is what this document is about. It's looking at commercial opportunities in a much more proactive way, as opposed to perhaps trying to revisit things that have been dealt with many times before. So those are the recommendations. Executive, all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. And now we move on to item 7, which is environmental enforcement pilot schemes, results and future options. Is that right? Okay. And first of all, I'll ask the portfolio owner just to read the recommendations, and then David Partridge will brief thing, and then I will be calling Councillor Moore, who has asked to speak on the standing corner 44. David Harvey.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The recommendations of this report about civil enforcement is to recruit an additional civil enforcement officer, a full-time equivalent at grade F. 2, to involve the existing civil enforcement officer response team, which is 3 times full-time equivalent, in environmental enforcement work alongside their existing duties. That may sound a bit of a mouthful, but there are in fact legal requirements which we need to go through to ensure that this expanded team of 4 will be able to carry out the flexible and accurate response that we require, which the Director, Mr. Bartram, will now explain to you.
Okay, this is a really simple report. As most of you probably know, we had a company do a trial of environmental enforcement, mainly in the city centre, and this is simply us taking that in-house and creating additional posts which will be paid for out of the income generated by the fines, so it is cost neutral. We then will train all of the existing civil enforcement officers to do a multitude of tasks, so we have a flexible team. It just gives us an extra resource, so I think it's a really logical proposal. Happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, David. But before we do, we have Councillor Moore, who would like to come in and speak to the committee.
Thank you very much. And I welcome the idea of further civil enforcement officers. And I'd like the executive to consider whether there should be a further responsibility added to the current and new enforcement officers to be able to take action on idling under the Road Traffic Vehicle Emissions Fixed Penalty England Regulations 2002. So, notwithstanding any cooperation that is required with the highway authorities to approve this, although I do understand that the Regulation 3 that local authorities with an air quality management area are enabled to take this action, that this measure would help contribute towards the management of air quality in the city and a measure that could improve it, and would be an important last resort for the council for persistent offenders. This is currently not a responsibility that the County Council traffic enforcement officers have, and they might not actually be called traffic enforcement officers, but I couldn't remember the name, but the enforcement officers that the County Council has. So please, so that's the first thing, and then the second part of the report, please can the leader clarify what is meant by illegal camping and how this is going to be defined. Will fines be applied to those people who are sleeping rough because they are homeless, or to gypsies and travellers who are covered by the Equalities Act? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll open it up to debate, please. Everybody who wants to make a contribution. Councillor, oh, right. Councillor Mitchell, come on. This is the first time. Good.
Thank you, Lisa. I would like to start by welcoming this report. I think it's a very welcome initiative that's come from the pilot, and obviously any additional environmental enforcement staff is something that I've personally been calling for, and I'm sure other members around this table have wanted for quite a long time, so I very much welcome this. Like Councillor Moore, I would just like to ask whether the remit of these particular officers could potentially be looked at in terms of extending what they actually end up doing. And idling is definitely something that I agree with Councillor Moore on. That is a major issue in certain locations, particularly, for instance, in my ward, times outside St Sybil's School, which is a concern for children as well as parents. So if that could be looked at as a possible remit of work that could be carried out as well, that would be grateful. Also, I would like an assurance. I know that there is within the report about the fact that maybe the work has been in the city centre so far, but obviously there are communities around the city that are affected as well by these issues, and I would hope that with additional staffing we could potentially be looking at doing work in communities as well around the city instead of just the city centre. And finally, fly tipping isn't mentioned in here, but fly tipping can be a major issue as well in certain areas. I don't know whether it would be possible for that to be looked at as well. But in general, I'm very much in favour of this and do welcome it.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, any contributions? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, it's pleasing to note that members of opposition parties are in agreement with us that this is something that we should carry forward. In answer to Councillor Mitchell, I can say that the process that has been adopted over the last 12 months with the commercial contractor has been that if significant complaints have come from areas outside the city centre, then members of staff, in particular the 2 members of staff that were employed under the contract, have been allocated to that area for a certain period of time in order to attempt to clear up that particular problem. Clearly, as you can see from the numbers, 8.7, 1,525 smoking offences, of which 1,125 were issued in the High Street, and 135 Sydney Street and 85 Queen Street. Clearly, the city centre is a major focus of these difficulties, and given that we are, as has been said on a couple of occasions already tonight, in serious financial difficulties, it is important that we ensure that we continue to raise income from this process in order to pay for these staff to be here, because if we don't raise income then these staff won't be here, we can't afford it. So what this is about us as a city council, and hopefully you as residents, taking pride in our city, in that our city is clean, tidy, welcoming, and an attractive place for people to shop, to work, to play, to visit. So I recommend this report to you. I'd like to see, I'm sure it will go forward, I'd like to see it go forward. And again, this is an example of the creative and imaginative work done by officers, because they could just have said, we can't afford to do this, Councillor Harvey, we can't afford staff to do this, but they didn't. They thought of a methodology which involved a 12-month long contract with a private company. It proved successful, and now they've mainstreamed the project. And it just demonstrates the difference and the shift in opinion that we've got from officers and the way things are working. So I commend this report to you, and thank you.
David Bartram, I mean, there were some points raised, although it's not about questions or anything. Can you explain to us, by doing it this way, what has changed is there any rules, new rules being enforced, or anything else? What has changed from the previous, when it was contracted out?
Okay, so there's no change. So the focus is still on the things that we've always enforced or enforced under the pilot. So it's mainly focused around littering. So the car parking teams also enforce illegal parking in our surface car parks. So they also cover illegal encampments on our land. So this is tents. So we're not talking about travellers here. This is more tented communities that spring up on our land. So that's what they enforce at the moment. So there's no change to those really. We could certainly look at expanding the remit. I would need to make sure that we have the powers to cover those separate enforcement actions. I'm not clear on that at the moment, so we'll have to do some research on that.
Yes, I was going to say, because there's a point there about idling. I know it well from driving horrible old diesel buses in and around Exeter, and being given the instruction, do not turn the engine off because you won't be able to start it again. So happily those days have gone, and I know they've got policies about after they got cut out on vehicles. If you're on the bus and you think, oh, what's he stopping for, or she stopping for? It's not, it's the island. So we are working with people. I think it is something that we can look at, and I'm glad that we can have a look at that and see if anything comes back. Councillor Moore mentioned about air quality in part of this, but air quality is something that we continue to monitor and take into account. We are the 7th lowest authority in the country for CO2 emissions, and we had a 7.7 reduction last year. So I just want to put everything into a little bit of perspective in the direction that we're trying to go. And finally, about imposing fines on sleeping rough people or homeless people, gypsies. No, we've been through all that before. We are not doing that whatsoever. The BSO is quite clear on how we deal with people. We are not asking these people to put a hat on and start going around finding people and issuing orders in that way. That is not the intention at all. So I want to stop any of that. I can understand the question coming forward, but if that was, please believe us, that is not what I intend to do. As you know, for those of you who choose to read what I had to say last week in the Express and Echo, I am saying this is a top priority now. That my portfolio and myself, Chief Executive Directors, will be taking the floor because we are not unhappy with the progress we're making in Exeter. We just want to do more. So I just want that to be clearly understood. So there's no further questions on that one. So can I ask all those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Okay, unanimous, good. I'm glad that's unanimous. Item 8 is the flood protection schemes 2019 to 2022. And David Bartram, I mean, I see the recommendations there, but just because there's stuff with Environment Agency, where are we coming with all of this? David, just do the recommendations and then let David come in to explain, please.
Okay, and Chair, there are 3 recommendations here that they're on the same line. One was a contribution of £100,000 towards a £970,000 law public flood scheme currently being delivered by the County Council. 2, to recommend to Council the estimated £800,000 budget for the delivery of the Topsham Ferry Road and Strand flood protection schemes, of which only £80,000 will be made of ECC capital spend, and the remainder would comprise contributions from other parties, primarily the Environment Agency and the County Council. And 3, to recommend to Council the estimated £500,000 budget towards the Bowling Green Marsh embankment repairs, and these costs will be recoverable from the Environment Agency throughout the life of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, David. David Bartram, if you could just tell us briefly what's all this about.
Okay, so I think this is a really good example of the partnership working with the Environment Agency and Devon County Council. This is to deliver flood protection schemes for all of our residents. I think the important thing to note is the table in 4.5. So what we're talking about on the north side is protecting 55 homes, some of which are our own council. The Topsham Flood Protection Scheme protects 64 homes and 15 businesses, and then the Bowling Green Marsh project is to protect an RSPB nature reserve, and there is a legal driver for us to do that. And what it shows is with a relatively small contribution to the City Council, we can get a wide benefit to the city and its residents. So this is a good way of working on flood protection schemes and a good example of joint working.
Thank you, David. Have you got any contributions on this one? Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to reiterate that. I'm not really much of an expert on sums. It took me several goes for O-level maths. That's a 16 qualification for those of you that are too young to remember it. Replaced by GCSE. Looks to me like there's a total spend of over £2 million, £2,090,000, for which we're putting in £200,000. That looks to me like a decent deal, and I think the officers are to be commended on managing to arrange that. And the number of houses and the amount of land that's protected again is very important. So thank you, officers, for delivering this for us. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on that? Yes, it is indeed a good deal for us to put in £200,000 to get a return of £2 million from the Environment Agency. It's a sad reflection that the Conservative and Liberal Democrat coalition actually took that away. That would be totally funded by central government, and now we have to work in collaboration to find the funding. So it is a good deal, but £200,000, another £200,000 being taken away from a district council. So all those in favour of the show, thank you very much. So we're on to item 10, which is the housing rents and service charges. And this is, oh, sorry. This is the two David show tonight, obviously. So that's all right. The structural inspection programme for Exeter City Council bridges. David Harvey to introduce the recommendations, please, David.
Okay, thank you. Again, we have two recommendations. One, that the executive recommends and council approve an additional budget of £150,000 to span the financial years 2021 and 21-22 to complete the programme of principal inspections on all City Council-owned bridges. The executive recommends and council approve an additional ongoing annual budget of £40,000 coming to in financial year 22-23 to fund a rolling programme of regular bridge inspections and maintain this in perpetuity. In line with the design manual for roads and bridges, this will involve principal, 6-yearly intervals and general 2-yearly interval inspections. Thank you.
So, David Bartram.
Okay, I'll keep this brief. So this is really just about sensible, good asset management principles to make sure that our bridge assets are maintained in a really good condition. So what it's doing is just reinstating a programme of principal inspections and catching up with a backlog of inspections. So I would recommend this as being a very sensible way to manage our bridge stock successfully.
Thank you, David. Anybody want any remarks on this? Dave Hodgson, the £40,000 that we have to set aside in the financial year 21-22, we haven't found a budget for that yet. Am I right in saying that?
That's correct. It will be added to the figure of about
I just want to paint that picture to say that we have all these things to do, and to glibly say, oh, well, that will pay for that and that will pay for that, when we have to do things like this. I just think people need to understand how the council finances. It is a difficult area, but we have commitments, and what we will be doing is making that commitment to ensure the infrastructure is maintained in a proper way within the city. Those are the recommendations. All those in favour? So that's agreed as well. So deja vu, item 10, housing rents and service charges. And Councillor Laura Wright to read your recommendations, please.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations to executive, the executive recommends council to approve rents of council dwellings are increased by 2.7% from the 1st of April this year. Garage rents to be increased by the same amount, 2.7% from April this year, and service charges are increased by 2.7%, with the exception of the charges specified in paragraph 12.3 from the 1st of April 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Dave Ompton, as this is a finance matter.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report to seek your approval for housing rent policy, which is based on central government policy. This follows a 4-year period where we've had to cut rents by 1% annually. The increases in charges will support additional maintenance, support additional capital programme, and management of existing properties for tenants. And as you'll see, in terms of the service charge, those amounts are set in order to have a break even, so we have to justify what we spend in terms of service charges, which is why there are some exceptions to the 2.7%, so some elements will decrease because the contract in place means we don't need to raise the prices and indeed reduce them in some cases. As I said, statutory requirement. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, Councillor Wright, do you want to come back in? Come on in, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. While it's never a popular headline to see that rents are going to increase, that's something that, of course, we're not aspiring to do. It's worth putting it into context that because of the Welfare Reform and Work Act of 2016, we had to reduce our rents by 1% every year. So that left us with a deficit in our budgeted and expected revenue income of 7.9 million, so just shy of £8 million down for us as a council, still having to deliver our maintenance programme and have aspirations towards a development programme. The reduction to tenants because of this was 75 pence a week less rent. So to put that into context, collectively 8 million to us as a council to be able to maintain and develop our properties, but for the council tenants it only meant paying 75 pence a week less rent. So the rent increase is sort of to try and bring us back into line of where we expected to be 4 years ago with our budgeting. It's a statutory requirement to be able to do this with the maximum that we can charge is 2.7%. That's set with the CPI rate, which is currently 1.7%. That won't change throughout the year, so if this is agreed, the rents won't go up again for our tenants during the year. It will be set at that amount. The amount that we're currently spending on maintenance, we have to spend. We do maintain our houses to a good quality. A lot of work has been done by the service leads at the moment with asset management to restructure the way that the assets are managed and the staffing for that to save money, but also to make a more efficient service. So a lot of work has gone into that, but we still will be short on the budget without this rent increase. So knowing that if you're a council tenant, you are a stakeholder really of the council and what we do budget-wise. So having that small increase in rent is a way of sort of investing back into your own housing for yourself and other residents in the city.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wright. Does anybody else want to speak on that? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. Just basic mathematics for me. We've had 4 years where we've had to reduce by 1%. And during those 4 years, pretty sure I remember inflation carrying on, rising. And then we've just got some of that ground back with an increase of 2.7%. I'm pretty sure nobody at this table is pleased that we are forced to raise rent. That is a fact of life. Things cost more. But this 2.7% hasn't actually got us back to where we were before we were forced to reduce costs and struggle to maintain the houses in the quality that we'd like to maintain them.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Right, all those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Now, somebody handed us a piece of paper. It must be true because she read it in the Guardian. Sort of makes us, typifies us exactly. Queen, if you just want to mention that.
Well, Chair, it's really positive news. It says ministers have reached a deal with Flybe and shareholders to keep the airline flying. So, fantastic.
Okay, I'm pleased. Oh, there must be 1,000 families in the Exeter area, even a sigh of relief this evening that their futures are. And that must be a terrible 24 hours or so. So that's great. You know, Boris, eh? We've got the owns it all now. Item 11, which is that was good news, by the way. This is not bad news, not brilliant news that we have to deal with over the coming years. And so it's the budget strategy and medium-term financial plan. And I'm going to let David Hodgson do this one.
Thank you, Chair. I've been Section 151 officer since 2013, and I've never given good news in this report in all my time. This time it's a report of two halves. So actually, if we look at 2020-21, so the first year of the medium-term financial plan, next financial year, the one that you will be setting the council tax for in February 2020, actually it is positive news. The government weren't able to complete their review of fair funding and their changes to business rate retention in time for this year's local government settlement, and therefore they've given us a 1-year rollover. So for the first time in my time as Section 151 officer, we've actually got slightly more money than last year to spend on services. But unfortunately, it is a 1-year stay of execution. So for next year, proposals in the budget, along with a proposal of £5 increase in council tax, which the government have confirmed is the limit before triggering the referendum, will deliver a balanced budget for next year with the minimum level of reserves above the £3 million mark that I've set. Looking forward, however, the government is still committed to a reform of the business rate retention scheme, and they are committed to a fair funding review, and they intend to implement that from 2021-22. Alongside that, the settlement for new homes bonus this year indicated that the amount given for 2019-20, the fourth year, is a 1-year only figure. That seems to indicate that new homes bonus will be phased out over the life of our medium-term financial plan. Those two items together, because the business rate retention means that they will reset our business rates back to our baseline, and we will lose the growth that we have generated over the last 7 years. Those two figures, along with additional spending pressures we have, mean that in the 3 years after next year, we are looking at reductions of £3.7 million. And as you rightly pointed out in the previous report a couple of reports ago, because we're in a situation where we're seeking to reduce by £3.7 million, any additional funding, such as the extra 40,000, just simply adds to that figure. So longer term, not a great position for you, but for next year, we will be able to propose a balanced budget with the work that's been done. Happy to take any questions.
I think, David, it's a bit like the Saracens. We're on minus 35 points to start with, minus 3.7 million before we even start. If we were to apply the budget of £5 on the standard council tax D-ban, how much per year and how much per week is that from the city council's point of view?
So for the city council, it's £5 a year. So it's a £5 a year increase. Our current band D is £155 for 5 pence, £160 for 5 pence. Works out at less than 10 pence a week for the city council. Obviously, council tax bills as a whole cover all local authorities that serve Exeter, so it's Devon County Council, Devon Cornwall Police, and the fire service as well. But our element would increase by £5.
Okay, thank you, David. Many of the councillors have had briefings on the plan going forward. We will be having the budget coming up at the end of February. Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, I mean, in the context of all the times I've been a councillor, we've always had budgetary pressures since 2012, 2013. I remember back then we were trying to save £3-something million, and this time as we look at our medium-term financial plan, again we have a potential deficit of over £3 million, which is a massive percentage of our very small budget as a city council, over 10% I believe. And it just seems kind of crazy to me that the central government puts local government government in this position on a sort of several year basis. So I was wondering if Dave could outline maybe a way that we could recommend to central government where we might avoid these kind of cliff edges, where we all understand that funding for local government needs to be fair, and that we don't, Exeter has benefited from growth in business and in housing, and the growth in business rates and housing reflect the fact that we need to support more people and more businesses in the city, and that's why we've been retaining that money. But there's a need to support other areas as well. But the way that they're doing it at the moment is this cliff edge scenario where we have plenty of money one year, and then we know that in a couple of years' time we're facing a completely different budgetary outlook. So I just wondered if they had any recommendations for central government on how that could be avoided in the future.
So when the government undertake their review, they will produce a consultation paper to which we can respond. You're absolutely right, cliff edges are a problem. Actually, the government recognise that, and it's their intention that going forward that they will have a more phased approach to resetting business rates, which will reduce these cliff edges going forward. Unfortunately, they are absolutely adamant that they need a one-off complete reset of business rates to bring us all back to our baselines, redistribute the money accordingly, and then introduce a phased transition going forward. That doesn't help us. What I can say is if they reduce our funding to the baseline, that's as low as we can go. That is what they say is the minimum we need to deliver our services. So surely they can't go any further than that.
Okay, anything else? Any comments to make on that one? No? Okay. All in favour of those recommendations, please show. That's approved, yeah. Thank you very much. So, keeping on this theme, item 12 is the council tax base for 2021. David.
Thank you, Chair. There's two parts to this report. Statutory requirement that Council set a council tax base for the following year, 2020-21, and also approve the NNDR1 for 2020-21. And we must notify the relevant preceptors and central government by the 31st of January of both decisions. So, as with previous years, seeking your approval to set the council tax base at 37,348, which represents an increase of close to 1%. Again, as with previous years, seeking delegation to agree the NNDR1 to myself. The NNDR1 is relies on software updates from our software supplier in order to bring in the latest regulations and decisions from central governments. It's another thing that's very heavily managed by central government. So it always happens late in the month, and it's always very tight for us to get it and meet the statutory deadline. There isn't another meeting before, and so I'm asking you if you enable me to sign that off on behalf of the council. Of course, I'll let you know what the outcome is, because it heavily impacts on our budget for that you'll be deciding on in February. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Any questions or contributions? No? All those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Okay, we move on to item 13, and this is on the venue update. And Councillor Sutton, I think we're going to have some revised recommendations, where I'll leave you to explain that. So people may want to start scribing if they want to.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are 3 recommendations in the report, and I'm proposing an amended recommendation 2. So the first recommendation is that members note the report finds a low likelihood of external funding of £61.91 million for a multi-purpose venue. The amended second recommendation is that members support the premise and the ambition of the redevelopment of the Call Exchange, and requests the matter be put before scrutiny to explore funding sources. And the third recommendation is, as provisionally printed, that members note the progress regarding a privately funded commercial theatre for the city, and that any future positive developments be brought back to council. Thank you.
Thank you. John Paul Hedge, please, Director.
Thank you, Chair. So, members will remember it was around about this time last year where you kindly commissioned these reports. We looked very specifically at a 1,200 seated and 2,400 multi-purpose venue as part of the City Point development across the road to see on all aspects whether or not that was feasible. So we looked at the event programme, the spatial brief, so the size, high-level assessment of the site location, as well as a 25-year business plan. We went out to tender for that, and I was delighted to work with consultants Forestry, who have been involved in a lot of original work around Exeter, knew the subject very well, along with architectural designers. At a fairly early stage within that report, we got a high-level indication around costs. Those are outlined in the two reports that you've got there. And the outline projected capital cost for such that build is nearly £62 million. At that stage there, that also doesn't come with a fly tower. So the fly tower flies in scenery, and it's used widespread in the industry to bring kind of high caliber, high end shows. So on knowing it was that cost, and there being no initial sources of natural funding with the portfolio holders' permission, we commissioned an extra body of work to have a look around the Corn Exchange. So you know, we have a really successful theatre that we run in the city. There were 333 events put on in the city. The Corn Exchange is a great venue in terms of what it does. We're incredibly proud of it, but it works very hard, and it is a very tired building. So you have two reports, the second of which looks at that. The projected capital costs of that building there, which does have a fly tower, are a lot lower than building a brand new vision spec across the road. It outlines, if we were to say go today, how long that work would take. I point to the early stage work that would be required around it, Reba Stage 1 and Reba Stage 2. Even to get initial concepts off the ground, check the structural surveys are okay, check the designs work in terms of what we think that they might. That work, the body of work you're looking for, is around £200,000. And having just listened to Dave Hodgson's financial report, that's another £200,000 that this council would have to provide, in addition to the £3.7 million worth of savings. So, as much as members support culture, and I'm incredibly grateful that they continue to do so, our financial pockets don't quite match the ambition at the moment, thus the recommendations in the report. It's worth saying as well, as part of this body of work, we have had some interest from the private sector. That's at a very early stage, and if the members director, I'd be really happy to continue that work. Should any private sector develop, I'll be very happy to put that out to the council.
Okay, any contributions? Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. Yes, just to expand on what John Paul has been saying. I mean, nothing would give me greater joy than to be looking at a report that actually said, yes, let's go ahead and have a brand new city centre venue. And the reason for having another look at it was with the original 4th Street work was done at a time when the site on the opposite side of the road, the City Point site, wasn't in play because Crown Estates still had that option, and we still thought that they were going to be developing that site. So we did ask them to go back and have another look at it. And yes, anything is possible if your pockets are sufficiently deep to fund it. But as we've been hearing, this is not a good time financially for
district councils, and you know, even someone who is disposed to be optimistic, as generally I am, can see no reasonable way of putting together a finance package which is actually going to deliver a new build of the quality that Exeter certainly deserves, and that we, I know, would all like to be able to deliver. So what we're asking at the moment is to actually, to, if you like, kind of go back and look at the assets that we have, and see if there are any other opportunities to develop and improve that particular venue. But it does leave the option open that if the very early conversations that have been referred to do progress well, and there is an appetite and budget to go back to looking at a new venue, that we should do that. And it leaves it open that if other capital funding schemes come on board, the Arts Council have in the past had capital funding programmes that it's possible to bid for, but we do have to be realistic. You do have to, in order to bid for those funds, have plans developed and scoped and taken through rigorous stages before they become eligible for funding, and that's just to get you permission to make an application way before decisions are made. So I'm not particularly happy that this is the nature of the report that we are looking at, but I do feel that it's realistic and prudent and sensible in the current climate, but should things change either from the public or the private sector, we still have options. Certainly I'm going to welcome scrutiny, take up the opportunity for them to have a look at it and bring forward ideas to contribute to the process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anything else? Well, just to say, I think what Councillor Sutton is recommending, that we ask scrutiny to take a look at it as a critical of these reports. We've made it clear in this recommendation that we have to be realistic on what the options are, but we're not just going to pack this report off, put it on the shelf for it to gather dust. What we want to do is we're going to be proactive if we can. I think that's what we do as a city in any event when we get projects going. We try to find partners, we will try to do that. However, it is very, very difficult, as Rachel full well knows, in that area. But, you know, at times we need to celebrate what we do have in Exeter, the Phoenix, the Barnfield, and there's other areas where bespoke and sort of amateur productions are dealt with. And I can say that because my daughter would expect me to say that. But more importantly, you know, on the upside of things, and I'm sorry I'm going to quote facts at you, we are the third local authority for the maximum spend on culture in the United Kingdom. 53 pence per head of population on culture. As I said, that is way above double a lot of areas. What it's got now. London is low down. That is because obviously they've got a big population and they already benefit from a lot of NPO, National Portfolio stuff. But I just want people to know that we are wanting to do it. We have great investments in the round. We have great activities already at the Corn Exchange. And our desire, if we can't get anything away there, which is looking undoubtful, the top of South Street. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could start to get something away there at some stage, just to improve, and if you read the report, to improve the public realm. 4 Street Hill is a wonderful part of our city with all the independents thriving, I think, in my view. And can you imagine what that would anchor for us if we could get it away? So I'm quite keen that we do, and I know Rachel is very, very keen. It's been one of her passions since becoming a councillor. And so I don't want anybody to think that we're shelving this. We want people to understand the difficulties we have. A lot of people tell us they want an entertainment venue in Exeter, and we're going to try our very, very best to bring that about, and that's the intention. So with those revised,
Somebody proposed to change the recommendation and second that, please.
okay. Right, we have a seconder, Councillor Morse, seconded. So that's changed, so we have still 3 as amended.
That's correct, just as the change.
As the change, but it's 3 recommendations as
That's what
recommended.
I just need to vote just to change the recommendation to, then vote.
Right, okay, all those in favour for the change to recommendation 2, all those in favour of the recommendation, thank you, so that's carried unanimously as well. So that's item 14. Sorry, item 14 now is the minutes of the Leisure Complex and Bus Station Programme Board, and I've got an indication from Councillor Moore who would like to come and talk about do you mind, yeah, I'm just...
Thank you, Chair. As I'm sure
no, that's item 15, sorry.
Of course it is. I'll go back again.
I'm getting a bit
Sorry, too many more in the building.
You know, give the possibility too. So, Diana, you wish to address the committee on item 14, which is the Leisure Complex and Bus Station Programme Board minutes.
Thank you
On the
very
minutes.
much. Yes, I'm concerned about the minutes that relate to the coach waiting and the fact that it's not to continue. With all the purpose-built student developments in Bankfield Street, it will become a busy area well into the night, and I'm concerned it's easy to say that your waiting room will be unsafe without real experience or evidence to the contrary. The alternative proposal for coach travellers that to be dropped to the outskirts of the city, I would... I'm just responding to the minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, cool. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm concerned that this has perhaps not been properly thought through, or could be more thought through. A cursory search on the internet tells us that Falcon stops at Exeter, Homerton Road and the Southern Park and Ride sites. And the first bus from there is 6:40 in the morning, and the last bus is just before 8 PM to Park and Ride buses. And there's 3, for example, National Express coaches that leave Exeter for London between midnight and 5 AM in the morning. So I'm not sure how passengers are expected to get there, to get into town or from town and connect with buses or trains or connect to the coaches, especially for those who arrive to Exeter late at night in what might be a new town and what often with loads of luggage. So are you expecting people just to have trade for taxi fare? So I'm really concerned because I think the coaches should add to an integrated transport system, and we need some evidence as well about the assertion that not bringing coaches into the city centre would reduce air pollution, because I'm not quite clear if this was a comparison made between the number of coach users and the alternatives they might use. So coaches are an affordable way to travel, especially compared to other forms of public transport, unfortunately, and compared to car travel they're significantly less polluting and also have less NO2 emissions than cars per passenger. So in light of the programme board's decision to drop the coach waiting room, what review will there be of the bus shelters on Sidwell Street to improve facility, orientation and security for coach users? And just my final point, I'm also concerned with lack of clarity regarding the toilet facilities at the new bus station. The council's about to go to tender for an operator of the bus station, and the operation of charging has been, the issue of charge toilet use has been left open. London train stations used to charge people to go to the toilet, and now I see that they've dropped that, and toilets are a really important consideration when travelling. And I would urge the executive to ensure that a clause is put in the tender documentation to ensure that toilets are kept free in the new bus station.
Well, thank you. As the chair of that meeting, many of those points could have been raised by one of your members of the Progressive group. I understood he was unable to attend, and I was just checking. I gave you a lot of latitude there, Councillor Moore, on how you wanted to unpick, because I'm trying to be open and transparent when you should have been discussing the minutes. This is a resolved matter. It is dealt with. Okay, I can assure you that, as the minutes tell us, we debated this long and hard within the committee as to that decision. The irony of it was that we've been in communications with the Civic Society's bus users group, who have been quite vociferous in their comments and criticisms where they felt justified, and observations about how we've been delivering the new bus station and coach facilities. And I had an email from Mr. John Brownbridge that afternoon, who had actually pleaded with me not to revert the coaches back to Bonbon Street, which is where we're going to have them, but to keep them in Sybil Street, as this is a far better way. I mean, I have to say, this was an argument that Councillor Edwards, remember him? Councillor Edwards and I were actually quite noisy as ex-transport workers on about that sort of connectivity. We have no desire to force them to go to the outskirts of Exeter. Just to say, I've caught the bus, the Falcon, from outside of Exeter before. It seems to work very well. Cream and I, we drove past the National Express and bus stop out at the barn at Hull actually 2 days ago, packed out with people. People make choices where they want to catch the bus. They'll make the choice on where they want to go and how they want to deliver it. So these decisions have been made, and that is it. They'll be reported to council. You know, decisions have been made. We've been consulting with all these people. The police have been involved. It's all there in the minutes. If you wanted to speak to Justin Pickford, the project manager, is to explain what we're doing and how we're doing it. That is what we're doing. Back around the Banfield Street, there'll be the appropriate base for disabled to be able to get on. All that will be taken into account with regard to the contract for the bus station. That procurement will be started. We will have those discussions. We're very mindful about public toilet provision within the city. Why would we? Why would we do certain things? But we took advice on that. It's all there on that decision-making process. So it's not a question of rocking up here tonight and changing all of this. The decision has been resolved. It was delegated by full council to the project board. Unless you've got, so I don't want to open up a debate, Councillor Pearson, but if you've got some information for us, that would be good.
Just, I think just reflecting, because I was also attending that meeting, I think the minutes reflect a discussion about, after realising that there were going to be issues with the arrangements that were proposed, what the options were. So I don't think that there were many things referred to in Councillor's statement that reflected a discussion and not things that were actually resolved to do. And I think the important thing is that we get the solution right for people at Exeter, and that's only going to come by talking. So that's what was happening.
Well, these minutes are for noting, everybody, they're noting the decision has been made, and you know, we just can't go on picking everything just because one of us don't like something. There's opportunities to discuss all these things. It's big, well, that's democracy. It's democracy is not getting your own way, I'm afraid to say. It's a majority decision, and that's what's being taken on that one. It actually was unanimous. So there we go. That's for noting. Again, there's no decision to be made on that. Turn to item 15. Loan to Exeter City Living for Clifton Hill development. You'll see there's a recommendation to improve a loan to Exeter City Living. I'm going to ask David Bartram to explain. David is our shareholder on the Exeter City Living board, who reports direct to ourselves and other people within the council organisation. David.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is an opportunity paper that Exeter City Living has submitted, and it is a request to provide a loan so that Exeter City Living can progress the residential development at Clifton Hill and deliver the 44 houses as shown in the report. So it includes details of the development value, development costs, and the forecast profit, but they are in part 2 of this report, and we can discuss those in part 2. I would, if I may, just make a slight change to the recommendation.
Yep.
So I think it's worthwhile including the value of the loan requested in the recommendation, because we have done that previously in all the loans that have been given to Exeter City Living, so that would only seem to be fair and transparent. So I'll just read the revised recommendation if I may. So that Executive recommend and that Council approve a loan to Exeter City Living of £15.64 million, the details of which are included in Part 2 paper in more detail. This report is to enable Exeter City Living to progress with the purchase of Clifton Hill and the development of 44 new homes in the city. Clarify that later on later. So just to explain, the loan is actually for the site purchase, the design, the development and the construction of the 44 homes, roads and infrastructure that go with the development. The financial return on this loan to the council, to Exeter City Council, is included in the Part 2 report. I think it's also worthwhile noting that because of our decision to go for residential development rather than student development on that site, which is a choice that has been very clear, there is an undervalue, and that undervalue is in excess of £2 million. So we will need the Secretary of State's approval, and again we can discuss that later.
Okay, I want just to remind everybody, we have a Part 2 section in a moment. We shall not disclose figures which are confidential. Obviously, when we go into Part 2, other councillors are more than entitled to attend. They have that right to attend. Sorry, they have the right to attend, and I would welcome them to do. So, do we have any contributions, Councillor Wood?
Just to reaffirm, I think, that we've listened to the community. We have heard that they do not want to see purpose-built student accommodation on this site. So they're not getting it. We are not going to do that. That means that we cannot receive the same figure for sale of that land that we would have been able to if we sold it to a private developer to put student accommodation on it. So the figure we are going to receive for the sale of that land is much less. It is of a level where we have to apply to the Minister of State for approval. But what we will come out of the scheme is 44 new homes for people in the city, built to the highest standard, because it's going to be built by Exeter City Living, which is a company which Dave Bartram is the shareholder rep on behalf of the council. So the council has direct influence over this company. It's an arm's length company for the council, and one of the high benefits of that is that they will only construct high quality housing, the sort of thing we would like to see everybody in the city able to live in. So we're going to get 44 top quality houses there, no student accommodation, but it all comes at a price.
Okay, I think before I invite anybody else to speak, we did have Councillor Jemima Moore, and sorry for that, because I've got yours by an email and not a piece of paper. I couldn't find the piece of paper, so come forward, Jemima, and you are entitled to make a statement to the committee on this matter.
Thank you. As I think you all know, the green space of Clifton Hill is a place that I and the residents of Newtown care greatly about. The council's highly unpopular decision to sell and build on this publicly owned green space prompted much campaigning and local interest in saving the site. So, when Councillor Violet committed to reversing that decision, his promises were celebrated. We were delighted that the space would be preserved, but also anxious that his words may be too good to be true. As you know, since Councillor Violet's announcement, I've been requesting for his decision to be formalised and have asked for confirmation about exactly which parts of the site would be sold. I was disappointed to see, having been reassured that only the footprint of the sports centre and the car park would be built on, that a large area of the green space to the side of the sports centre is also earmarked for development. To me, and I believe most people, the footprint of a building is the space that it currently occupies, and it's a shame that the term footprint is misused in the report, which is to be discussed later. The community may accept that the need for housing and revenue raising outweighs the loss of this portion of the green space. That is, the area to the side of the sports centre where 4 and 5 bedroom houses are to be built. If this compromise is to be made, assurances should be given so that the community can trust in the council's plans for the wider site. The community may be reassured if we consider and indicate our intentions for the future of the land currently occupied by the golf driving range sooner rather than later. A leasehold is obviously currently in place, but we could commit to keeping it green and publicly owned. When I and fellow campaigners conducted a survey to see how the community would like to see the land used, the responses overwhelmingly favoured the creation of an inner-city nature reserve, and I believe the golf driving range may, in time, provide a space for such an amenity. I would be interested to know whether, if the community accepts the development of the land at the side of the sports centre, can the council commit to keeping the land currently used as a golf range in community use, even beyond the end of any current tenancy agreements. Many in Newtown and the wider area still mourn the loss of the sports centre, so I feel it is important to retain the rest of the green space to be of real benefit for the whole community. I know that members of the campaign group would be very interested in working with us to ensure that this happens. While this site is technically brownfield, to all those who use it, it's very much green, and with the right care has the potential to become a vibrant inner-city green space for both the city's residents and wildlife. Given our commitment to become climate neutral by 2030 and agreement to recognise and act on the connected biodiversity crisis, preserving and enhancing this green space becomes even more crucial. The current proposal to sell to Exeter City Living to maximise revenue and ensure the council has greater control over what is built is very much more satisfactory than the original proposal, which would have left us at the mercy of private developers. I'm pleased to see that this development will be low carbon and recognise that we desperately need more affordable housing. It seems unambitious to provide only 25% of the development as affordable housing though, and I very much hope this can be revisited and that we also give due consideration to the possibility of creating social rented housing within this development. I noticed there is considerable car parking space allocated and wonder whether so near to the city centre this is absolutely necessary. I have been asked also to request that the development includes local bicycle stores for people living in and around the new development. These could raise revenue and help encourage a reduction in car use. I hope it is now clear that it was a mistake to commit to sell the green space and a mistake to make financial commitments based on its sale. Selling off our green spaces to plug gaps in our funding is both short-sighted and unsustainable. If, due to these mistakes, we really must accept losing a substantial part of this green space, we must ensure that this never happens again. I therefore urge that, along with the decisions being made here today, the Council commits to preserving and all publicly owned green spaces in Exeter for future generations. Finally, I hope that during the Part 2 discussion, finances will be scrutinised further, with members considering why we're not in a position to sell only the built-on areas of the Clifton Hill site and preserve the entire green space as Councillor Violet had previously committed to. I hope that the exact cost of saving the green areas surrounding the footprint of the sports centre and car park will be clarified. Ideally, I would like to see the plans revised to preserve the green space beside the sports centre. Of all the legacies that we may strive to leave as council, accessible, biodiversity-rich inner-city green space must be prioritised.
Thank you for your statement, Councillor Moore. Before I'm going to ask the Chief Executive to make some remarks on this. A long statement. I am going to take a deep breath and respond in a moment to some of the points which I think are grossly unfair of what we're trying to do. I have to tell you that, Councillor. You know, I did not, never, at any point, commit to saving or not building on spaces which are around, within the red mark around there. You all know I didn't. Stop saying I did. What I told everybody was quite clear. The green space to the rear of the Clifton Hill Sports Centre, I told you I wanted to see protected. I told you I wasn't going to build on. I told you I'm not going to build on the golf course. I told you we're not going to build on the ski slope. I've told you already with many of the correct, well, I know what I said. I need to go, I have checked what I've said. I am quite clear. and nobody else has come up with this, that somehow we can only build on the footprint. And perhaps in part two, you may get a better understanding of why that could never work. You've heard what David Bartram has said with me. I have to refer this to the Secretary of State because we're selling it at greater than £2 million. I want people to appreciate what we're trying to do. Working very hard with the community in that area. I gave all those pledges and undertaking. I'm standing by them. I cannot have my words misinterpreted in this way. I will stand by what I've said. I'm going to deliver what I said, but I've made it perfectly clear that is the site that we were going to put out, and we're going to sell it to ECL. David is explaining that. But I'll take a moment and I'll ask the Chief Executive, Kareem Hassan, to speak on this.
I think this site and this whole development has been kind of an illustration of the strategic challenges any authority has to deal with. The convention is council deal with land disposal quite separately from the planning consideration, yes. That's for a reason. And the reason is that council generally have to get the best receipt they can possibly get. And that receipt then is a consideration that you have into your priorities. And then planning is used to determine what the solution for the scheme is. So you have a council that currently only has 2 years supply of housing land. 2 years. We have an absolute demand to meet the needs to provide housing for our residents. And you've got a very constrained city. It's very hard to find pieces of land that you can build on. But that's our challenge. We have to provide over 600 houses every year to meet our housing needs. So when I advise you in confidence, I say you need to be taking action to deliver your housing land supply. You also have got a political commitment to deliver a carbon neutral city. And in 10 years, we need to radically change what we do. And that's forcing us to look at everything we do. And you've got an environment bill that's saying we're going to have to deliver a net gain in biodiversity on each and every single site. And that means as a city, we're going to have to come up with a mechanism that how will the development industry compensate for biodiversity, and they won't solve it themselves. We're going to have to solve it. So there will not be a single site in this city that we don't look at in terms of how we increase biodiversity. And that's entirely compatible with the way we are trying to deliver a carbon neutral Exeter within 10 years. The development company has been our attempt to completely disrupt the development industry as far as Exeter is concerned. Because you've all seen what the volume house builders build in the city. And because we've got 2 years supply of housing land, they tend to get their way. So we took a very bold decision to create a development company that would set new standards for environmental performance. And just like our council housing, where we only built passive house, we've decided that we will deliver a company that delivers the same environmental standards. And that when it comes to us leading by example, we will deliver on our aims and our vision. But you still have a financial problem we've got to address. You've heard it, a 3.7 million shortfall that we need to address. And you, because of the policy decision you're taking now, are forcing us to find a way of addressing that shortfall, and that's a significant sum of money. We will now need to notify Secretary of State if you make the decision, because the shortfall is greater than the 2 million. So what I would be saying to you as an officer is sites like this have to fulfill lots of objectives that you've stated. None of it is easy, but what you have done, you've been consistent with your vision. This is a site that will deliver, and I just think people in the come back to my original position, which is the difference between a property and planning remit. Your planning conversation will allow you to explore all those issues, the details and the right, and I'm sure the kind of work, and just to give you, the work that they've done, this is very little known, that leisure building over there will have over 2,000 plants. That's a healthy planting scheme that was commissioned as part of that construction. I've never heard anybody mention the planting scheme that we've specified that's going in that door. genuinely, members, is there anybody aware of the fact there's over 2,000 plants going in there because we wanted a healthy planting system, just like we will not allow adhesives in that building so that the internal environment of that leisure complex has no chemicals, it's filtration free, and will set the standards for leisure complexes for sport England. That's the commitment we've given to the environment and quality, and what you've got here with this proposal is to deliver that quality of development. So I've gone off on one, like I always do, but the point is you're dealing with lots of strategic issues, and it's not easy, and I feel for the kind of challenge you're having to address.
Well, thank you, Kareem. So you might guess the sort of discussions we have in my office over these things. When I say to Kareem, but I'm still not going to sell the green space, or the golf course, or the ski slope. And he tells me quite clear, and the 151 officer tells me, how are you going to do that? My easy options were there all before me, but we've decided to move away from that, and I'm going to face those hard choices. My group is going to face those hard choices because we think they are the right decisions to make. Very arrogant that may sound, but we are going to consult. I've given you that promise that we're going to be consulting and talking to the groups on what is behind of the legislation. I've always said that. I'll go to my grave saying that. That's exactly what we've said. I cannot have that and sort of make myself being misquoted. We can in a moment, in part 2, speak about some of the other detail. Many of the other things that you mentioned, Jemima, with regard to that is planning. That is planning. And I've made it perfectly clear to Exeter City Living last week. Councillor Fole was with me because he does the city development. I've said to them quite clear when I was there, I said you need to consult, and once you've consulted, I want you to go back and consult. I want you to carry on consulting, and when you've done all that, I want you to carry on engaging and talking to that community about that. I don't want to hear that nobody's had the opportunity. Now that doesn't mean to say everybody gets their own way, by the way. It's all about compromising, putting it together. But people must understand the challenges that we've got to do and what the indicative plan is on the type of buildings we want to put there is very, very important. So, I don't want to get into planning issues because there is no plans in front of us as such. We're out of consultation on that. The design team's out. All the documents are going out and the communities will be chatting about it. That's what I want them to do. That's what I want them to do. So, anything else to add? Anybody on item 15 before we go into the next phase? Councillor Williams.
I thought it might be helpful to reassure Councillor Moore that within planning, if you actually perhaps take a look at the Facebook feed at a planning meeting, you will see that we're always looking at things like cycle facility parking. We're looking at all the things that you mentioned, and it might reassure you to see that everything that comes in front of us, we look at it really, really carefully. So please be reassured that those points will be looked at planning committee.
Any other contributions? Councillor Fole.
Thank you. The leader has listened, he's spoken to a range of people, and he's been brave enough to reverse that decision. I know he has the unanimous support of the 10 people here on the executive, and he's honouring the pledges made to current users, such as the ski slope. I think it's unfortunate that some cheap shots are being made at the leader at a time when he is exercising, I say, a brave stand in reversing those decisions, and which are to be applauded.
Thank you. Any other contributions? No? Okay, so the recommendation is as amended, but you have to vote on the policy of recommendation in the event.
Yes, we'll vote that
The officer amended his recommendation.
Yeah, amended his recommendation. Councillor Moores. I suppose I better second it. All those in favour? Thank you very much.
Vote unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous, thank you. Well, I'm afraid to say to members of the public, we move into part 2 now. I split the two reports up because it all would have been in part 2, and I thought it was very, very important that we aired everything on public debate, and I trust this is just about some numbers, and it will all come out at some stage when the deal is done, but for commercial sensitivity. Thank you for attending, and I hope you walk away thinking you got what you expected to get, and all the best. Thank you very much.